Welcome to the MSDW Podcast. I'm Jason Gumpert, editor at MS Dynamics World. On this episode, we are talking D365 Project Operations with returning guest Kuldeep Gupta. He's a Microsoft MVP and CEO of ProMX India. Kuldeep's been looking carefully at the recent wave of AI-related Copilot features Microsoft has revealed for Project Operations, and he shares his top picks with us here. They range from planning to report generation to assessments and recommendations. We also discuss the Project Operations roadmap more broadly, the upcoming deadlines for transitioning from Project Service Automation to Project Operations, and a new training course Kuldeep has been developing. All right. Hey, Kuldeep, welcome back to the podcast. Thanks for joining me today.
Hey, Jason. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. And thanks again for having me here.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I know you have a lot you've been watching. But before we start, maybe for our listeners who haven't met you before, who don't know you, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself, what you do, where you work?
Definitely, would be my pleasure. Jason, I am Kuldeep Gupta. As you know, I am Business Applications MVP since last 5 years. Project Operations as a subject is my favorite. The product, I love it. I know the product since it was known as PSA, Project Service Automation, and I have seen its transformation since then. I deeply involved myself in understanding what the product looks like, and since the time when there was no good documentation, I started seeing the application. I made a ebook out of all the notes that I had and started curating a nice ebook out of it. I'm also the CEO ProMX India, and we are Dynamics partners. I think we are doing good. We are headquartered in Germany. I live in India, Mumbai, with my family. And that's about me.
All right, excellent. Yeah, and I think we've been talking, for quite a while. I think since before you became an MVP. So it's been great to see your work evolve and how you've stayed up to date on and kept working with the product and really pushed it further and work with so many clients. So I'm really interested to get your take today because we really do want to focus on kind of really what's new in Project Operations. And I think as we were talking about what we might discuss here, one of the first things you suggested was we should really look at what's new in Project Operations from the perspective of Copilot, because some things are kind of becoming established, I guess I would say, and then others are maybe just being introduced or planning to be introduced, right? So we want to talk about that and even a little bit more if we have time today. So I want to jump right into it. I mean, you've been looking at the features in Project Operations that are really like Copilot in Project Operations. Do you want to maybe start by sort of setting the stage of what it's all about right now? When you hear about Copilot in Project Operations, what does it really mean?
Definitely, Jason. First of all, before I start, it's always engaging and fun to write articles for your esteemed editorial. I think I love doing that. That's why I think we are still engaged. To talk about Copilot in Project Operations, even before we go into Copilot mode of Project Operations, Copilot has become a very big buzzword in the Microsoft ecosystem. And I think Microsoft is heavily investing in the Copilot. With that said, all the suite that Microsoft has, Copilot is picking up pace, and Microsoft has started introducing a couple of good features in Project Operations as well. And I think up until now, there are 4 or 5 good features on Copilot that Microsoft has introduced. What I'll do is I'll start talking one by one about those features if you allow me. And I think I want people to know about these features. And as and when I talk about them, they will also understand the benefit of each one of them.
And let me just note for listeners, if you want to sort of follow along with some official Microsoft documentation as we go, we'll have some links in the show notes to the various, at least some of the various features we're going to be talking about here, right?
Definitely. So I'll pass on the links as well. They are coming right from the source of Microsoft, learn.microsoft.com. I'll pass you those links so you can pass it to the listener so they can go there, dig deep, and try to understand more about it.
Right. And I think even if I understand, if you're a listener and you're a project operations user, you can even go into your own system and or maybe if you're not using these features, maybe maybe a pre-production system or something like that, a test system, and even take a look at these and figure out how to configure them and all that.
Definitely. So all these features have come out as general availability since last year. So I think when you sign up for a trial instance as well, you get them by default there. So you can always evaluate how they work and stuff like that. Meanwhile,
Mm-hmm.
I'll also tell you how they will work. So it'll become very easy when you sign up for a trial instance and try to see how these features work. It'll become more, what do you call, very easy for them to understand how to use them.
All right. So should we just jump into it? I know you had a couple in mind here. Do you want to start
Yes,
with one?
I'm very keen, Jason. Let me just start. Maybe the first one. I think this was one good one that they brought in, but there are many more good ones that have come up. The first one was, I think it is called as task plan generation. This comes out of the Copilot feature from Project Operations, where it was somewhere in PSA, a template feature. Of course, you cannot compare apple to apple on the template feature there. What this feature allows you, if you put a nice name of the project and you put a very good description about what you're looking at in the project. For example, if it is a building construction project, you give a nice name of the project, like building, for example, let's say XYZ building construction project as a name. And then you put it's a 7-story building project with a garden behind it, and 7-story each, or with 2 offices on each floor with some square feet and stuff like that. I think it'll generate a tentative plan for you, handy enough to expand it. And those tasks can be served as a kind of template which you can use um, uh, as an initial template for your look. So I think there are good things sometimes as a project manager we forget to encompass when we are planning for the project, and this Copilot feature doesn't allows you to lose them when you're preparing for your project plan. Very intuitive. So I've used it by myself.
Yeah, this was one that from my side, I haven't dived into it deeply, but when I've seen it demoed, it made a lot of sense. It was like, oh, okay, like if you're looking for a good example of how sort of an automated Gen AI scenario could probably help people in certain roles and in certain systems, this seemed like a really good one to me. And maybe this was top of the list. Do you think this was sort of one of the most obvious ones for project operations?
Yes, this was, I think, one of the most obvious one and the first ones to bring in, because what happened was in the PSA they actually had this template stuff which they could prepare as a default template, or a template which you reuse, and then you can select a particular template to prepare another project plan. But I don't think every project in itself is different. So
Mm-hmm.
copying a template and then editing it for your specific use takes a lot of time. But when you use this feature, I think it becomes super easy based on your description to curate a specific plan for that particular project.
I guess the other thing I would wonder is this a good one for project operations customers to perhaps start with if they were going to test out, Copilot capabilities? Would this be one to consider early on in their journey?
I would definitely recommend them to start using it, because as and when people start using it more and more, we know it's an AI model behind the scene. It learns by itself, and as and when we keep on using it, it'll become more mature. People start passing feedbacks to the AI learning model, but this definitely should be used one.
Okay, interesting. Anything else you want to say about that one, or should we move
No, I
forward?
think so for this one, this should be good. I wish I could show you one, but yeah, next time, Jason. But the next one is also very interesting. I think I've been doing a lot of consultancy in my past to to all the enterprise segment customers. What the next feature says is also called as risk assessment, and that's also something coming out of the Copilot feature in the project operations. What happens is, based on the project plan in project operations, your risks are automatically defined in the project. You don't even have to do any manual action over there. Just hit a button, generate risks, and depending on your project tasks, your descriptions, the name of the project risks are automatically coming in. The larger the project, the good amount of risks are also populated there. Earlier, it was so manual that people had to think about what can be the possible risk that can come up in the future, but this has really helped people in terms of gauging the risks of the project and mitigating it in the very early beginning. Even with respect to, let's say, natural calamity that has to be taken care of is also into consideration here.
And this one, I haven't used it myself. I think maybe I've seen a very quick demo, one of those 1 minute, Microsoft demo
Yeah,
videos or something. But it seems like the kind of thing where there's almost very little, if any, like kind of cost to trying it. Is it that kind of a feature that anyone could at least run risk assessment against a project to see what it tells them?
exactly. You got it. So I think this is exactly for that reason where people sometimes forget that this also can be a potential risk, but Copilot doesn't allow you to forget it again. So I think this is really a good one.
And I know there's some setup steps for this and for probably all of those. So those are good to reference in the documentation as well. One question, so we're through two of the four that I know you wanted to get to. One of the questions I always kind of have, and I've seen some details about this in like the licensing guide, but does the question of sort of capacity or allotment of AI of I guess you call it Copilot compute, does that ever factor into how you've seen users think about sort of how they use these features, because these are really baked into the product, like you said? Is capacity a concern or a consideration?
It's a very nice question, Jason. First of all, I think your second statement answers it all because it is a part of the product itself. I don't think there is a capacity constraint that comes in. In fact, you should call it as a boon to the application because it just helps you do the right decision making for the right set of features that it is brought into. And I don't think there's any capacity constraint that brings in, because when you start building the entities by yourself, I think they take more space because you put in junk data inside, and then it eats up the space. But this is very lightweight.
And I guess the other element that I would think of, because these are running like Azure AI services in the background to generate the
Right.
actual generative steps. These are also sort of very, as I can tell, defined to certain roles within an organization and certain scenarios. So it's not as if it's going to be sort of pumping out huge amounts of content or huge amounts of output in terms of volume. These really seem to be very very focused in terms of how they're used and when they're used.
Right, you got it.
Yeah.
Exactly as it is. It's very light, as I said.
Okay. And yeah, I think that maybe that same point might. Well, I don't know. You can tell me. Does that kind of characterization still apply to the next one that you wanted to talk about?
Right. So next two that I say, in fact, there's a
Mm-hmm.
bonus one also that is coming as a fifth one, but the next two ones are my real favorite ones. And it came out of a real need, and I don't know, Microsoft heard my heart out for the third one.
They listen
This
to your
is
heart.
really, this is what I really used to do manually every week, is project status report. I
Yeah.
every Monday had a habit of sending out the project status update to all my project owners and the customers. I had to curate a lot of information to build this project status update report, wherein this co-pilot dude in project operation is doing a fantastic job. It not only creates a status update report for the customer, it also creates an internal project status report for the internal stakeholders. It pulls up variety of information like the hours, the current statuses. It also looks into the risks, the completion statuses. Are we ending up in the amber state from the green state of the project? Um, I mean, it's just wonderful. And on top, there is a nice summary curated in the end of the report, which gives you a real status of the entire project. And I have been trusting this blindly. Of course, it's said that you should not trust anything that is curated out of Copilot blindly before you send it out to the customer. But this really does a good job, Jason. So this is one fantastic thing.
All right, and that's your direct sort of personal experience.
This is my personal one, and it
Yeah,
is my personal favorite as well, because Jason, I
yeah.
struggled this for many years to do this manually, and this feature is
Sure.
one love for me.
Yeah, and I think I started off saying the task plan generation seemed like the most obvious one, but maybe this was the most obvious. I mean, not obvious, but like the most sort of relatable.
Why not? Yeah, of course,
Yeah, yeah.
because project managers always are on toes. They have to do a lot of project management, but sending out a status is kind of a monotonous activity. You get rid of them
Hmm.
by giving them this feature. It saves so many hours of them. It is such a boon to the application, trust me.
Yeah, and I mean, is it worth talking a little bit about sort of what kind of data or what kind of information out of project operations this report is actually able to, what information it's able to pull and to assemble into a meaningful, in terms of, I don't know, types of data at the project level or at the top. I mean, is there anything particular interest there that's worth noting?
Sure. So I can give you an information about that. I think it gives you an information about the project budget, how much is consumed, how much is remaining. The second valuable information that you get out is how many people are working on the project. And it curates all of them in the nice pie chart, okay? How many resources are working with their name, how much amount of hours have they consumed out of that. That's another valuable information. And then it tells you what are the risks that are there still in the project. Are we delayed on certain tasks? And then the third and the fourth, and I think the last one goes out as a nice summary of the entire project that comes out of it. I think at this point of time, these valuable information is something that any stakeholder would love to see, and it gives you that.
Well, let's move on. What's the next one?
All right, so this one also is my, out of the 4 or 5 features, you would say the second favorite one is called as resource recommendation, where let's say in a normal scenario, when you plan an entire project, you put the tasks down, you put the number of hours down, and based on the skills that you need for that particular task, there is a resource recommendation matrix as an AI engine running behind, and it actually prescribes you the right set of resource that is available for booking on that particular task. And it also gives you what is the best match in terms of percentage in the decreasing order. So you are, imagine how much amount of work is going on. First of all, when the skills are in place, you don't need to search from a list of, let's say if you have 1,000 employees in your organization, you don't need to search based on the skills what is the best match for this particular task. That's the first thing that gets rid of. And the second thing is it also tells you who is available during that duration of the task to be working upon. And also when the match is given, it becomes very easy for the resource management team to prescribe this project manager, this is the guy who can work onto you. And it also just doesn't matches that, it also matches your cost component, which is the most effective resources who can work on that. Because if your project is running on a particular BU or an organizational unit, it'll first try to search for the people from that particular organizational unit, then it'll spread across into different geographical units, because everything of that sort incurs intercompany costs.
So I have questions on this one for you,
Yeah,
just
please.
from reviewing the documentation. So first of all, this seems like one that really, for it to work properly, it really has to be adopted across an organization, because I just think, to understand really where these resources are being, human resources, where these people are available, where they're being, where they're being, what projects they're being assigned to, especially across business units, skills, availability, all those things. I mean, you really need a global view for that to be useful. Is that true?
Exactly, exactly. And imagine what you just said. If a person or a set of people need to do, it is so much amount of data they have to look into the system, curate the information together, and come out for the result, which this AI engine is doing behind the scenes. It's really powerful.
And the other thing I think I gleaned from the documentation is that this one seems to require sort of more, more elements to actually set it up, right? I think there's a Power Pages element, right? There's more Power Platform components to make this work.
No, so you don't need to do all those Power Pages kind of stuff as a configuration. The only configuration needed, of course, there are good amount of data is to be configured behind the scenes. Like every employee, when they are brought in the system, needs to be set up with the right set of skills in the system. If that is set right, I think the rest the system will take care of, because it needs to, and not just skills, it needs to be mapped to the right organizational unit, if he's from India or from Germany or wherever. um, Based on that, the system also has his past historical information about on what projects he must have worked for, how many duration, how much duration. So his all those kind of mappings is also considered out. So I think this kind of configurations, not these kind of, I think there are two, as I said, only skills matrix and the right business unit.
Okay.
That too helps you out.
All right, great. And is this one you have any firsthand experience with?
Yes, I did use it, of course, a couple of months back for my one of my customers, not for implementation, but when I was doing a pre-sales demo, the customers was really flattened. This was one enterprise segment customer where they were still struggling for allocating the right set of people onto the projects, and it's close to 17 19,000 user based company, which has a huge base of people to be using them effectively, because they were struggling with a couple of issues that they didn't know how many people are on bench, how many people are really getting utilized effectively, and are the right set of billability coming out of people by deploying the right set of people onto the projects. So they didn't knew if they are having excessive resource onto the company, or they're having lack of people, or are similar kind of peoples are still demanded by multiple projects. So if some people are not even utilized, they were not even recognizing that. But this tool will definitely help you getting that down by resource recommendation, because it's not about a human element that comes in place for biasing and all those kind of stuff. It just prescribes you. It's just that you have to use them, these resources.
And this is also a feature where the recommendations are provided, but then it's ultimately a person who's making the final decisions about which resources they would actually choose, sort of verifying that the recommendations make sense and applying them sort of as they see fit, right?
You got it. So it's after the entire engine runs behind, you get a list of people who best matches in the decreasing order of the match. And then ultimately the decision is on you. Of course, that's the last manual step, because the system can do that much. AI doesn't forces you on anything, but will give you a nice guided direction, I would say, and then the decision is on you.
Yeah, and that's an interesting point there that I think is always important for I think, and I imagine that customers have questions on, like what is being recommended to me versus what is being done in my in what is being done automatically behind the scenes that I'm becoming not engaged in, right? And I think that's a big question, for the future, because if we could transition a bit here, maybe I think this is maybe a good point to do it. Please tell me if you want, if you disagree. But Microsoft's vision is kind of blending those two philosophies, or those two outlooks. That there are some things where business applications will sort of be there to help you, and then there will be other scenarios where business applications will take care of things on your behalf, almost. running behind the scenes in autonomous ways. That's sort of as I take it, that's sort of Microsoft's vision, and that's where some of their forward-looking features are headed.
I think I couldn't agree more to what you said, because that's exactly the intention and the agenda with which they are pumping in a lot of investment on this Copilot thingy, and it is really working fine. It imagine the status reports, these resource recommendations. If someone is doing a lot of background work for them, which is so human driven, I think why won't people use it? And Microsoft has started getting in there beautifully. It is really helpful. Personally, I feel when I've started using them, it really helped me. In fact, in thinking about who knows what, who worked on what project, and whom should we pick up based on the availability, whether they are really available or not available. And I think you just don't need to apply your brains. It does it on your behalf.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, are there any other? I know there was there's sort of more in the product right now. I think the four areas that you really wanted to make sure we at least talked about, because they are available, because Project Operations customers can start playing with them, trialing them. Seeing how they behave, seeing how they perform in comparison to what they do today. Perhaps to me, that's also one of the big questions, right? It's like, how does this solve a pain point that you have today or an inefficiency you know about today? I assume that's the way you kind of recommend that customers, one of the ways that they approach these kinds of features.
Right, exactly. I agree to you. Apart from these four features, I think there's one, icing on the top of the cake that I'm about to tell you. That's the fifth one. And I think it's just the world facing trouble with their people doing time entries. What Microsoft has come up with, the fifth feature, is also called as, a Copilot for time entry. And it's one good feature which reduces a lot of time of the people in the organization to quickly do their time entries. Because for any organization, Jason, I think the time entry is the blood. And if the time entries are not done right, I think that's the source of revenue that calls out for money incoming. If you don't do the time entries, you're not there. What Copilot for time entry is doing, from the project plan, when you put in the efforts and the start date and end date, behind the scenes, it automatically creates the resource assignments for that particular person. And the Copilot for time entries just picks those resource assignments and starts creating the time entries for you. What you only have to do is come there and add in the comments for the justification of those time entered. Of course, the customers asked for them. What did you do on those hours? It's just about entering the comments if you were asked for doing that, and then you're done. Just submit them. I think it's that easy. This is also going to be one favorite for all who uses time entries deeply in their organization.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a bit of an analogy there. Just as the project managers have to labor over project reports, every billable employee or resource has to spend time after a busy week, typing in the number of hours on each task, and it's very laborious, but it's also critical from an accounting perspective, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. And if I'm looking at the right feature here, did this one reach general availability in September?
This is why I spoke it in the very end, because it just came out in the last month, in the September 2025, and it's in the general availability now for people to use it. So people can have fun doing the time entries using Copilot.
All right, great. Yeah, I mean, as you look further down the project operations roadmap, I know you don't, I know you don't own the roadmap and can't sort of, predict exactly what's coming. But what else do you see when it comes to, Microsoft pushing forward with more Copilot type of features?
Right. So when you go and read the release notes, there are n number of features that Microsoft is bringing in, be it Copilot or non-Copilot. So we've been talking for the Copilot stuff from last, I guess, 20-25 minutes. But I guess let's talk a little bit about other features also apart from Copilot that Project Operations is getting in, or Microsoft is getting in for them. A couple of them. One is, I guess, there is a feature called as progress-based billing on the fixed price contracts. This feature in Dynamics 365 Project Operation currently supports it supports a milestone-based billing schedule, so that companies can invoice their customers at predetermined amounts and dates during the course of the project. However, a variation of this exists where a portion of the milestone is invoiced each period instead of the whole milestone. And this feature enables project managers to split the value of the contract into a distinct schedule of the value. So, let's assume if your milestone is of 100,000 K, just giving a random number. But then if your progress of the project is, let's say, 20% for that particular milestone, you can also invoice based on the agreement with the customer. Since it's a very huge milestone, can we invoice you based on the progress that we have made in the project? You are having that facility to do the invoicing based on the progress of the project, even though if it is a fixed price project. Normally this feature is called in the time and material projects, where you can do a progress based billing, but it is also now coming in the fixed price contract from project operations side.
Okay.
This
Is this
one
one
good
that?
feature.
Yeah. Is this one that has been requested by customers who could really
Yeah,
benefit
so
from managing it?
yes, normally they bring in all the features where the community votes for the lots of features, or for some features for maximum number of time, and the demand is there in the community side. Microsoft looks into them. This was also one of the ones that were requested more number of times. This has been in the general availability since September 18, 2024. So this is
Okay.
also something people can start using it.
All right. Great. Yeah. Good to know.
Yeah.
Anything else roadmap wise that you would call out for people to watch for?
So there are two more, but I will quickly bring in the second last one that I want to tell you is expense app that is there in the project operations offers intuitive reimbursement experience. So earlier on the fly, when you do an expense, you couldn't submit the receipt for making the expense, but now with the mobile application development that they've brought into the project operations, as soon as you do the expense, you can upload the receipts there and there in the application, and it becomes so intuitive and easy. When you do a travel, it is a havoc to carry those many bunch of receipts. You just upload them, and you don't no longer need those receipts to carry with you. So that's one good feature that Microsoft has gotten into, and I think it has gone into the general availability since May 1st, 2024.
All right. Was there one more? Or
Yeah, there's one last one, Jason. I promise I will tell you more. I won't tell you more. There are a lot I can keep on speaking about, but this one is real good one. So earlier, the WBS task limit was 1,000. Microsoft has increased that to 1,500 tasks per project, which was also very big ask from not only the community but the customer base, who are struggling with the lesser number of tasks in the project plan. They were planning to bring in the 2,000 tasks per project, but I think it's still in discussion, not yet out. So this has also been out in the general availability since July 31st, 2024.
all right. Excellent. So if it's okay with you, I wanted to move on to just get your perspective on one more topic here. So yeah, this is really something that is more forward-looking, I think, and kind of comes to me from some presentations I've seen recently, and that's Copilot Studio, which is really, I think, kind of its own thing. It's not just Copilot in project operations is what we've been talking about. Copilot Studio is really more of a general tool, right? But I think I can see ways it might have a real impact on project operations solutions, and maybe in a different way for every customer. Honestly, I'm not really sure yet. But have you seen some of the latest demos of Copilot Studio and what it can do? And Do you have any thoughts around how you see that impacting your clients?
Definitely. So Copilot Studio is one, as its name Studio, it sounds so fascinating. It's a studio where you get inside, and I think you have a lot of possibility to build in your AI engine around the platform. Um, I think Microsoft has facilitated its user or the implementation community implementing or developer community per se to bring in a lot of features by themselves, where Microsoft takes a lot of time to get in features that don't take this as a complaint, but Microsoft also has a lot of responsibility. They are bringing in one by one the feature sets behind the scenes in the platform. But then if there is a set of customer who requests some features, um, you know um, urgently, I think you can't go to Microsoft because they have their set roadmap. Copilot Studio allows you to build your own AI engine for certain set of requirements. I can give you one example where we had to use this for one of our manufacturing customers, where there are service engineers. When their equipments are sold, they are into hot runners. When their customers are raising a complaint, the service engineer goes there and solves the issue. The customer was facing so big time an issue that nobody was recording what was the issue resolved with and how did they resolve the issue. And there was one engineer used to go one place and then try to do the entire R&D from start to end till the issue was resolved. With Copilot Studio, what we did is we started recording the resolution of the issues, and it started automatically building the history of what was the issue and how it was resolved. Now, the AI engine, by looking at the issue or the complaint that's raised, it proactively tells you can look at this first, second, third, fourth, fifth step, and most of the time, it really helps resolving the issue in a faster manner. And now, the service engineer not just visits one customer, but the frequency has gone to three customer, which subsequently they want to increase it to seven and then to 10. This one feature is my favorite one that's also been loved by the customer when we deployed it for them.
It seems like the the Copilot Studio team is really ramping up the amount of investment that they have. So, and that they're putting into supporting these sorts of scenarios. Data sources seem to be one of the big opportunities there. So when you talk about like that example, is the ability to look at a Dataverse, I guess a Dataverse data source, is that really one of the key, and learn from it? Is that one of the key capabilities or powers that it has?
Yeah, so basically the first ask or the food for AI is data. And when it comes to Dynamics 365 or Power Platform, I think Dataverse is where the entire amount of data is stored on. Copilot Studio looks at that place first and looks at the historical information from the Dataverse. That's its place to go.
All right, interesting. Well, before I let you go, I know you've also been doing work on a very practical issue, one that probably impacts a lot of Microsoft customers, and that's migrating companies from the older project service automation to project operations. Right? Can you tell us a little bit about the course that you've developed on that?
Lovely. So yes, it's a even before I start talking about my course, this is a real problem that is going to be coming up in, let's say, March 2025, where PSA as a product, which was the legacy version of Project Operations, it is going to be sunsetting in the month of March 2025, where Microsoft will stop support and they will start pushing the customers to upgrade themselves from PSA to Project Operations. Microsoft is not just pushing but also helping them by giving a migration path from within Microsoft platform as to guide them how to upgrade from PSA to PO. Well, in my course, now talking about my course, I have a free course that I've created for a couple of reasons. The first one, it guides you out of the box how project operations run. So if I think if you don't have the link, I'll pass you the link, Jason. You can pass it for the listeners. And in fact, if you go on Google and search Project Operations course by Kuldeep Gupta, you'll get the first link to register that. And it's a very nice 9-10 chapter course where you can go through how the configurations can be done in the project operations till the entire out of the box suite of project operations runs. And the 9th chapter is specifically talking about how the PSA to PO migration works. So if any customers whom they want to refer and are thinking about how the PSA to PO migration works, you can definitely go in the course. There are a couple of examples I have tried to show them how to resolve those issues. And in case you don't find any resolution for the issues that you have, you can always shout out loud to me. We can see how to support you.
All right, excellent. Yeah, we'll put a link in the show notes for that and a few others, because I know you've mentioned other interesting things here for both the Microsoft documentation, some of the other work you've been doing. And yeah, it would be great to keep talking about this, Kuldeep, because we've covered so many different things here, and I think there's probably some great opportunities to dive a little deeper, to learn a little more. And yeah, I hope we can do it again soon.
Definitely would be fun to again connect with you and talk more about this in future.
This has been another episode of the MSDW Podcast. My thanks once again to Kuldeep Gupta for joining me. For more information on the features we discussed today, we'll have some links in the show notes. We'll also have a link to Kuldeep's new course and his LinkedIn. And that's it for this episode. If you want to get in touch with me, you can send me an email, jason@msdynamicsworld.com. For all of our updates, please do follow us on LinkedIn. And until next time, this is MS Dynamics World, signing off.